My children sold my late husband's classic car collection while I was away visiting my sister. According to them, "You're too old to drive anyway." I stood in my empty garage staring at the oil stains on the concrete where my husband's pride and joy had sat for 40 years. 4 spaces. 4 cars. 4 corners of a life I had built with the man I loved for 43 years. All of it gone. I asked one question. Did either of you actually think I gave you permission? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Before the week was over, I would be calling the sheriff. Before I tell you what my son said when the deputy asked who authorized the sale, tell me where you're watching from tonight. And if you've ever had someone mistake your kindness for weakness as you got older, subscribe. Because this story reminded me that growing older doesn't mean surrendering your voice. My name is Helen. I'm 71 years old. I drive myself to the grocery store and to my Tuesday volunteer shift at the library and to church on Sunday mornings and to wherever else I please, because I am a grown woman with a valid license and 4 decades of driving experience, and nobody has given me any reason to think otherwise. My husband Warren died 6 years ago. He was 68. Heart attack on a Thursday afternoon in October, the kind that comes without warning and takes before you have time to say anything you needed to say. We had been married 43 years. I know the number exactly because I have thought about it often in the 6 years since. 43 years of ordinary Thursdays and Sunday drives and coffee before the rest of the house woke up, and arguments about things that stopped mattering, and laughter at things I cannot even remember now, but that made us both laugh until we had to sit down. The Sunday drives were a ritual from our first year of marriage. No destination, no plan, just the car and the road and the radio and wherever the afternoon took us. We drove to county fairs and roadside diners and lake overlooks, and once, famously, 2 hours in the wrong direction because we were talking and neither of us noticed. We drove to places we would never find again and never tried to. Warren said the point of a Sunday drive was not to arrive anywhere. The point was the going. Warren loved cars. Not in the way of a collector who loves investment value or status. In the way of a man who loves the thing itself, the smell of an engine, the weight of a hood, the specific satisfaction of a car that has been properly cared for. He had been this way since before I knew him. His father had worked on cars, and his grandfather before that, and Warren carried it the way some families carry a trade, not as a burden but as a language. When he could not explain something with words, he could explain it under a hood. When he was proud of something, he polished it. When he was sad, he went to the garage and came back 2 hours later with grease on his hands and something quieter in his face. He spent his Saturday mornings in the garage the way other men spend Saturday mornings on a golf course. He had the radio on AM, always AM, the same station that played old country and older pop, and the garage door open, and a cup of coffee going cold on the workbench. He had 4 cars when he died. A 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback in candy apple red, which he had bought at 24 years old and never sold. It was the first car he had ever restored fully by himself, and there was a small dent on the rear quarter panel that he had always meant to fix and never did, and after he died I was glad he hadn't. A 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, 2-tone, turquoise and white, which had taken him 3 years to restore, and which he had driven in the 4th of July parade every year from the time he finished it until the year he died. The grandchildren had learned to wave from the back seat of that car, sitting up on the trunk like small, delighted royalty while Warren drove slow and proud down Main Street. My granddaughter Emma called it the fancy ice cream car because it was the same colors as a turquoise-dipped cone from the shop downtown. She was 5 when she said that, and Warren had repeated it, delighted, to everyone who admired the car at that year's parade. A 1969 Camaro Z28, black, which he had found in a field in Arkansas, and which had taken 4 years and a philosophy of patient stubbornness to bring back. He said that car taught him that most things worth having require more work than you originally estimated, and he was right about that in ways he probably did not intend. And a 1952 Ford F1 pickup truck, green, which had been his grandfather's and which Warren treated with a reverence that was different from how he treated the others, quieter, more careful, the way you handle something that carries other people's time in it. What possession reminds you most of someone you've loved and lost? Tell me in the comments. Because when I walked into that empty garage and saw those 4 oil stains on the concrete, I understood for the first time what it means to lose something that was never just a thing. I had driven to my sister Ruth's house in Georgia for 10 days. I had told my children I was going. I had left a note on the kitchen counter with Ruth's number and the name of my neighbor Carol if anything needed attention at the house. I had done all the things a competent, independent adult does when she is going to visit her sister. When I came home on a Thursday evening, the garage was wrong before I understood why. I had pulled into the driveway, and I could see through the open garage door that the spaces were different, that the outlines I was used to seeing were not there. My first thought, genuinely, was that the cars were being serviced, that perhaps Carol had arranged something, that there had been a reason I was not aware of. Then my son Derek called. He called before I had finished getting out of my car, which told me he had been watching for me. He said he and his sister Pamela had been meaning to talk to me about the cars. He said it had been a difficult decision, but they felt it was the right one. He said the cars were sold. He said the collector's market was good right now, and they had gotten a fair price. I stood in my own driveway listening to my son explain my own property to me with the tone of a person who has decided in advance that their position is reasonable. I said, "Derek, who gave you permission?" He said they had discussed it between themselves and agreed it was time. I said, "Who gave you permission?" He said the cars were sitting in the garage doing nothing, that I was not driving them, that the insurance and storage costs were money going nowhere. Then he said it. He said, "Mom, you're too old to drive them anyway. Stay with me." Because what the sheriff discovered about those sale records changed everything. I did not yell. I did not cry on the phone. I said I would talk to him in person, and then I hung up. Then I sat in my car in my own driveway for a few minutes, and I did what I have always done when I am very angry. I thought about the paperwork. Those cars had titles. Titles have owners. I was the owner. I had not signed anything. I had not given anyone power of attorney. I had not authorized a sale in any form, verbal or written. I had simply gone to visit my sister. I went inside, and I called an attorney whose number I had saved for a reason I now understood. The attorney explained what I already suspected. The vehicles were titled in my name. To sell titled property, you need the owner's signature. To transfer a title without the owner's signature is fraud. She asked if I had any documentation. I said I had the original titles in my fireproof safe, where I had always kept them because Warren had been meticulous about such things and I had learned from him. She said to gather everything and not to confront my children until I had spoken with law enforcement. 2 days later, I called the county sheriff's office. The deputy who came to my house was a quiet woman named Officer Martinez who sat at my kitchen table and listened to me explain the situation with the patience of someone who is accustomed to hearing difficult things without filling the silence. I laid out the documentation, the titles, the original purchase records, the insurance policies, all in my name. She asked me directly, "Ma'am, did you authorize the sale of these vehicles?" I said, "No, ma'am. And I believe my children knew that." She made a note. The investigation took 2 weeks. What it found was not complicated because fraud, when it involves forged documentation, tends to leave a clear trail. My daughter Pamela had signed one of the titles. My son Derek had signed another. They had used the word authorization loosely, apparently having decided that their belief that I did not need the cars constituted some form of implied permission. The detective who handled the case told me, very carefully, that their intentions did not create legal authorization, that wanting something to be different from what it was did not make it so. Derek called me when he realized what was happening. His voice had the tone of someone who expected his mother to step in and manage the consequences of his choices, because that is, I will admit honestly, what I had done for most of his adult life. He said I was destroying the family over some old cars. I said, "No. The question is how you could do this to your own mother. He did not have an answer. If you've ever had someone decide what was best for you without asking what you wanted, subscribe. Because respect shouldn't expire with age. 2 of the cars were recovered before the sales were finalized. The Mustang and the Bel Air came back. The Camaro and the pickup had already transferred to buyers who had acted in good faith, and the legal process for those would take longer. The good faith buyers were not responsible for what my children had done, and I felt no anger toward them. My son and daughter were required to make restitution for the vehicles that could not be immediately recovered. They were not charged criminally. The district attorney declined to prosecute given the family relationship and the fact that no funds had been personally retained. What they faced instead were civil consequences and the specific, uncomfortable weight of having been publicly found to have sold their mother's property without her consent. The family members who had said, "Don't destroy the family," went quiet. I parked the Mustang back in its space and I closed the garage door, and I stood in there for a while. The smell was the same. The workbench was the same, with Warren's tools still in their places because I had not moved them and did not intend to. The old AM radio was still on the shelf. I turned it on, and it played a song I recognized from 30 years ago that I cannot name, but that I could hear Warren humming along to. I sat in the driver's seat. I ran my hand across the steering wheel, the way Warren used to do before he started the engine, just a moment, just his hand on it, like a greeting. I heard his voice, the way I sometimes hear it now, not as something supernatural, but as memory surfacing in a quiet moment. He used to say, whenever someone at a car show would imply that classic cars were getting too complicated for an older owner, "Don't let anyone tell you when it's time to stop driving." He said it about cars. He meant it about everything. Would you call the sheriff if your own children sold something precious without your permission? I genuinely want to know. My children thought my age meant they could make decisions for me. What they forgot was that grief doesn't erase ownership. Love doesn't transfer title. And growing older doesn't mean surrendering the keys to your own life.